For this project, any category 3 yarn will work, but I used a half a skein of baby burnout sport yarn in denim. As for tools, a 4.5 and 5.5 millimeter hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There's an optional written pattern that can help out too, link in the description if you'd like to grab that and follow along. Watch to the end of the video to find out how to enter this week's giveaway. We're using 2 stitches for this project and they will be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, and single crochet. This tutorial is for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're first going to grab our category 3 yarn, make a slip knot. We're going to grab our 4.5 millimeter hook, and we're going to start off by doing some measuring. The first measurement that we're going to need to make is going to go from collarbone to collarbone. And just to let you guys know, for me that's going to be a total of 10.5 inches, 27 centimeters, or 42 chains. And then get your stitch markers ready because we're going to need to insert into that last chain that we make. Now that we have that first chain, we're going to do a chain up of 1 extra, so we have 43 in total. So I have 43 in total. We're going to take our stitch marker and insert it into that last loop, and then from here we're going to measure down to the length that we want our V-neck to be. And for me that's going to be a total of 9 inches or 23 centimeters, and that is 34 chains. Now that we have that chain, we're going to take our stitch marker and insert it into that last chain as well, and this is actually going to be the bottom of our V-neck. So now we're just going to measure from here, going back up, meeting this first chain that we made, which is on our collarbone. So it should be the same length that we just went in with. So I'm going to go in with another 9 inches or 23 centimeters or another 34 chains. And now that we have our chain, what we're going to do from here is just run our thumb along the length of the chain that we just made for ourselves, making sure that it's all facing one direction, and then we can slip stitch into that first chain that we made. So into that first chain, we're going to insert our hook, take our working yarn, yarn over, pull through everything. Now that we've slip stitched into our first chain, now we're just going to go in with a row of single crochet while maintaining increases at every spot we have our stitch markers. And starting it off, we're going to do an increase into this first loop that we have right next to our hook, and then single crochet all the way down until we hit our next stitch marker, and then continue doing that all the way around. So going into this first loop that we have that's right next to our hook, we're going to be going in with an increase of 2 since these are our shoulder portions. So into this next loop that we have, we're going to go in with 1 single crochet. And then into that same loop, we're going to go in with just 1 more. And then from here, just put 1 single crochet going all the way down until we hit our next stitch marker, making sure that the stitch marker that we're going into is the one that's on the other side of our shoulder. We've now made our way down to our next stitch marker, so all we're going to do is take that guy out, but don't put him too far because we need to put him back in. And then we're going to go in with another set of 2 single crochets into that corner loop. But once when we get here, we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into the last single crochet that we just went in with. So the one that is closest to the V-neck. And then once when we have that, go ahead and go down, putting 1 single crochet into every loop until we hit our next stitch marker, which should be where our V-neck is, and then there we're going to be doing an increase of 3. We've now made our way back all the way down to our V-neck portion, and now once we're at this stitch marker, we're going to be going in with an increase of 3. So into that last stitch marker that we have, we're going to go in with 1, 2, and then also 3, because this is the bottom. We're going to take our stitch marker and then insert it into the second loop that we made for ourselves, because that is the middle. And then once we have that, go ahead and just go all the way back up with single crochets, just putting 1 into every loop. Once we hit that first single crochet, insert your hook with a slip stitch, and then we have 1 more row to do. So we are back and we have just slip stitched into this first single crochet that we made for ourselves, and I did insert my stitch marker into this corner as well. So now we have 3 stitch markers into our work. This is just as a visual, otherwise it's pretty simple to figure out where this increase is. But now that we're here, we're just going to go in with another row of single crochets, but it's going to be back loop single crochets, and then also we are going to maintain those increases where we have our stitch markers as well. So into this first one, we're going to take out our stitch marker first, insert our hook into that back loop, and put 2 single crochets. And then all I'm going to do is insert my stitch marker back into that first loop that we made. And then from here, work our way down, going towards the other stitch marker. And then the direction that I'm going is the direction that is going from collarbone to collarbone. So go ahead and do back loop single crochets until we hit our next stitch marker, and then I will do that increase of 2 with you guys. We made our way over to our next stitch marker, and we're going to take this guy out, and then we're going to be putting 2 back loop single crochets into that loop. And from here we're going to be inserting our stitch marker back into that last single crochet that we just made. And then from here, put 1 back loop single crochet down the V-neck portion of our collar, and then we're going to meet each other back to do that increase of 3 again. We've now made it over to the V-neck portion, and this is where our stitch marker is at, so we're just going to take this guy out for now. Insert our hook with 3 single crochets into that same middle loop, making sure we're going in through the back. And then insert our stitch marker back into that middle loop. And from here, put 1 back loop single crochet into every loop that we have, going back up our work. And then once we make it to the end, we're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet that we have for this row. We're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut. So this is what we should have once when we have cut and tied and our V-neck collar is pretty much all finished up. And now we're actually going to start going in with the body portion. And I know that we typically start from the underarm and then work our way in, but this time we're actually going to be working from the middle loop, that's where our stitch marker is, and then we're going to be working with our detail along one side, cut and tie, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So to get this part started, we're first going to want to make sure that we're going into the right corner loop that I have. So the corner loop that we're going into is going to be the one at the bottom of the V-neck, and that one's the one that has our increase of 3. And then once we have that, we are going to be switching out for our 5mm hook, and then that's going to be the hook that we're using for the remainder of the body. So once when we get here, we're going to want to try this on before we do anything else. We're going to want to try this on and then measure out from here down to the length of the top that you guys want. So I'm going to start off by making a chain that is 12.5 inches or 32 centimeters, or that comes out to about 45 chains. So how we're going to start that off is taking out that stitch marker, we don't need that anymore, inserting our 5mm hook into that middle loop that we have into the bottom of our V-neck, inserting our yarn onto our hook. From here we're going to pull through, chain up 1 to secure, and then from here just make a chain that is the length that you guys want your top to be. Like I said earlier, I'm going to make a chain of 12.5 inches or 32 centimeters or 45 chains. Now that we have our chain, we're just going to go all the way up our chain plus one side of our base with slip stitches. So once we get here, all we're going to do is block off that last chain, do a chain up of 1, and then into that loop that we blocked off, or the second one from our hook, we're going to go in with a slip stitch. And from here, go ahead and put 1 slip stitch into every loop that we have going back down our chain. But once when we get to the base, we're going to meet each other back so that we can do a decrease together. So we have just finished up going in with back loop slip stitches into the chain, and now we're ready to go into the first 2 available loops into the base, and then also slip stitch down the rest of our base. So what we're going to do is just do a decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches into the first 2 available loops. Not this first one, because that's the one that our chain is in, but we're just going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, making sure we're going in through the back, and also in through the next back loop. From here we're just going to yarn over, and then we're going to pull through everything on our hook. And then once when we have that, we are actually going to be grabbing our stitch marker, because we don't want to be doing our decreases into where the body portion is, where we just did our chain, because then it would make the body portion a little uneven. We want to make sure that we decrease only into the base side. So we'll always have those 45 loops along the bottom. But once when we have that, go ahead and just work our way up with more back loop slip stitches until we get all the way up to the corner where our stitch marker is. So we have made our way all the way up to our stitch marker, and this is where I'm going to stop. So what we're going to do is do a chain up of 1, flip our work, and then we're going to be going all the way back down with back loop slip stitches. But since this is our second row, our even number row, we're just going to be going down with back loop slip stitches, but with no decreases. And we're doing that so that we can help our curve actually curve, and so it won't remain pointy. So go ahead and just work all the way down with back loop slip stitches. So we are at the end of our second row and we're about to start up the third. So we're going to do a chain up of 1 and flip. And then from here, we're just going to go all the way down with back loop slip stitches all the way up until we get to our stitch marker, which is the first loop that we should have into our base. And then once we reach that point, we're going to be doing a decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches into those next 2 loops, remembering that we're not going to be doing any decreases into the chain. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you guys back. We have now worked our way up to the first 2 back loops that we have into the base, and we're just going to be doing a decrease just like how we did into the first row. So into that first back loop, yarn over, pull through. Into that next back loop, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and that is our decrease. And from here, just put 1 back loop slip stitch into every loop going all the way back up our base. And then once we reach this, we're going to do a chain up of 1, flip, and then since it's going to be an even number row, we're just going to work our way back down, not doing any decreases. So go ahead and do those 2 rows, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we have just made our way all the way back down to the row of back loop slip stitches with no fancy stitches in there, and we should have a total of 4 rows. This is the amount of rows that I want until I start to do my little chunks that end up cutting in towards the bottom, but you guys can make this as thin or as thick as you guys want, but just make sure that when you guys are going in with your chunks, make sure that they're in increments of 2 because you do need to end on the bottom so that you can work your way up to do what we're about to do right now. But other than that, what we're going to do is just continue on with this pattern, but within every 4 rows I am going to be cutting in just about an inch from this previous section. So as you guys can see, I have my stitch marker into this end right here. It's about an inch or like 2-ish centimeters from the top, or 7 loops. And then from here, I'm just going to work my way all the way back up with back loop slip stitches, still maintaining this decrease into the first 2 loops that I have into my base, and then going in with more back loop slip stitches until we hit our stitch marker. But we are going to be doing a decrease along this side as well so that this can start to curve in so that it can form a little bit more shape for us. So I'm going to go all the way up until I'm just 3 loops away from my stitch marker, just so I can show you guys what we're going to do. And then from there we can just kind of have at it, and then yeah, so go ahead and do back loop slip stitches, maintain the decrease that we have right here in this corner, and I'll meet you guys back once we get about right here. So we have just made our way all the way down. We are on row number 5 still. We have just done our back loop slip stitches all the way up, maintaining the slip stitch into the corner. And then now we are at this stitch marker that we have right here, and we're going to be leaving this last chunk from the stitch marker onto the end. So I stopped 2 loops right before our stitch marker, and we're going to be doing a decrease. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, insert into that next loop, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. And that's how we're going to have our work kind of slide in at an angle for us. But once we have that, we are still going to maintain with our even number rows, just going all the way down with back loop slip stitches, nothing fancy except for into this first one that we're going to do, we're going to be doing a decrease of 2. So go ahead and do a chain up of 1, and then into this first back loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. Into your next back loop, yarn over, pull through everything on your hook. That is our first decrease, and since this is an even number row, like I said, go ahead and just work your way all the way down, not putting anything else into this row. Once we get to the end, do the same thing that we did for this previous row. So work your way back up, making sure that you have the same amount of loops that you have as your initial chain all the way up until you guys get to your decrease where the base is. Do a decrease of 2 back loop slip stitches, and then do single crochets all the way up, leaving the last 2 loops, and then decrease into those last 2 loops. And then we have just 1 more row of regular back loop slip stitches after that, because that is an even number row after that. But remember, we are maintaining a decrease into the first 2 loops. So I'm going to get that all finished up, and then once I have it finished up, I'm going to meet you guys back, run you guys through it again, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so we are back with our next set of rows where we did our decreases but maintained pretty much everything else, and then this is going to be the majority of this side panel that we have. So just to let you guys know, I am going into increments of 4 rows because it does need to be even so that we end on the bottom, so that when we work our way back up, we can start doing our decreases just like how we've been doing. But other than that, this portion is completely up to you guys. You can have as big or as small gaps as you guys want, or as many rows as you guys want. All depends on the look that you guys are going for. But I'm actually going to do this for just a couple more rows. As you guys can see, I've already inserted my stitch marker into this last row that we have. I have a total of 8 right here. And I'm actually just going to keep going until I have roughly half the amount of loops that I have from this corner point to this shoulder portion right here. I have a total of 34 loops in between these 2 points, so I'm going to keep going until I have nearly half. It doesn't have to be exact because the portion that's going to curve our way up will kind of even that out for us. But go ahead and just keep that in mind, and then you guys can kind of customize this, go into however many increments of rows or decreases as you guys want. But yeah, go ahead and keep doing that. I'm going to maintain the same sequence that I've been doing in this last set. So I'm going to be working my way up, still decreasing over here. No matter what you guys do, you're still going to be decreasing into this corner. And then from here, it doesn't matter how far up you guys go, but you're still going to be decreasing into these last 2 loops so that it can curve out just like how this one does as well. But you guys can adjust it and do whatever you guys want from there. So I'm going to be doing this sequence, same exact thing, for another 4 rows. And then I'll meet you guys back to show you guys what that looks like, and also what we're going to do after that. And then lastly, if this is a little bit confusing, you guys are more than welcome to leave comments down below. I will definitely get back to you guys as quickly as possible. Or we do have a pattern in the description as well. If you guys want to grab that, follow along. Might be a little bit easier because it gives you actual number counts. So yeah, go ahead and check that out if you guys want. But other than that, I'll meet you guys back. Okay, so I am back with the total amount of rows that I said that I was going to have. So I was doing everything in increments of 4 rows, and I have these 3 chunks. So I have a total of 12 rows right now. And right before we start going up with the main portion that goes straight up with just a little bit of a curve, I do want to thicken this out a little bit, but this, like I always say, is completely up to you guys. So you guys can have more, less, whatever. This is completely up to you. I'm just going to show you guys how I did mine, but I'm actually just going to go up with 2 more rows of what we've been doing. So back loop slip stitches all the way up, decreasing into those first 2 loops into the base section, and then going all the way up with back loop slip stitches while maintaining the decrease on the end as well. And then when we're working our way back down towards the bottom of the top, no decreases into this corner right here, just one at the very end to maintain this curve we have right here. So I'm going to do this set, so 1 going up, 1 coming down, 1 more time, and then I'll meet you guys back right after that. So we are back, and I have just finished up doing the extra 2 rows that I said that I was going to do in the previous clip. And this is what things are looking like. And now we're going to start working our way up so that we can have a little curve curving out this way along these edges that we made for ourselves. So this next portion is going to be fairly simple, pretty much until we get to about here. So from where we're at, we should have ended on the bottom. We're going to do a chain up of 1, do back loop slip stitches all the way up. We are not going to be maintaining this corner anymore because we're going to try to even this out as much as possible. And then from here, once we hit the edge of this section right here, we're going to be going in with single crochets, and then we're going to slip stitch it into this next section that we have right here. So all of this is going to be one long section, and then this is going to be the start of our curve. So go ahead and do back loop slip stitches all the way up until you guys get to where you guys don't have any more regular loops to go into. And then we'll meet each other back so that we can go in with this chunk right here. Okay, so we have just made our way all the way up, not doing anything fancy, until we got to our last loop right here, right before we met all of these side slip stitch rows. And the first thing that we're going to do is actually go in with an increase of 2. I already have 1 in there, so I'm just going to take this out so we can visually see an increase of 2 into this last regular loop that we have. So I'm going to insert. We're going to go in with 1 slip stitch, and then 1 more slip stitch into that same loop, just like that. From here, grab a stitch marker, insert it into that loop that's closest to the shoulder portion, or the one that we just did, because that is going to be the loop that we're going to start doing our increases in, not the one on the bottom. But once when we get here, now we're just going to go in with single crochets just to clean up the edge, and also attach it into this base that we have right here. And how we're going to do this is however many side slip stitch rows you guys have from where you're at to where we have our regular loops, that's how many single crochets you're going to have. So for me, for this last section, I had a total of 6 rows, so I'm going to have a total of 6 single crochets going up right before I connect it to this next section right here. So let's just do that part together really quickly. You guys can definitely kind of see the rows. So you're just going to want to separate things and then just go in with a regular single crochet. So I have 1, I have 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Once when we have our 6, we're going to be slip stitching into that next available loop that we have. So not the one that has something in it, but the next clean one with a slip stitch. We can take the stitch marker out. We're going to yarn over, pull through everything. And then as you guys can see, this is where our curve that is going to curve along the outside is going to be. And then from here, we're just going to maintain doing this. So we're going to be slip stitching into that next available loop. We're going to yarn over, pull through, flip our work. And then from here, we're going to be doing an increase into the first loop and then also into that loop that we inserted our stitch marker into as well, just to balance out the fact that we were doing 2 decreases into every other row. So how we're going to do that is insert our hook into that first back loop that we have. We're going to yarn over, pull through, that's 1 slip stitch. We got 1 more, so insert, pull through. That's an increase of 2 into that first stitch. And then from here, do 1 back loop slip stitch into every loop until we hit our stitch marker. We're going to stay together because this is pretty close. But once when we get here, don't put your stitch marker too far, but do take it out. And then insert your hook into that next loop and put an increase of 2 slip stitches. So insert 1 and then into that same loop, 2. And from here, we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into the loop that we made that's closest to our shoulder. So this one that's higher up here. And then from here, just work all the way down with back loop slip stitches. I know that's a little confusing. Go ahead and click on the gear on the bottom right if you guys need to see that a little bit slower, or leave a comment. But I'm just going to work my way all the way down. And then once when we get down here, I'll show you guys what we're going to do after that. We've just done 2 slip stitches into our base. We flipped our work, and now we're just going to be going in with an increase into this first loop that we have. So into that back loop, go in with 1 slip stitch, and then into that same back loop, 2 slip stitches. And then now that we're working our way back down towards the base, just like how we were doing before, we're not going to be doing an increase into the increase that we have into the corner, just so it can round out and not be so pointy. So from here, whenever we work our way back down towards the base, or still working into our even numbers, it's just going to be regular back loop slip stitches, nothing fancy into the corner. Maybe something fancy at the base, but other than that, just go all the way down. And then once when you guys do hit your stitch marker where we inserted, because we do want our increases or our curves to be up towards the top, go ahead and just take that out, and then into that 1 stitch, just insert your stitch marker back in there. And then yeah, go ahead and keep doing this all the way down. Once we make it to the end, go ahead and do a chain up of 1, flip our work, bring it all the way back up to our stitch marker, and then we're going to do this sequence one more time, and then I'll let you guys go from there. So we have just made our way all the way back up to our stitch marker. As you guys can see, this is the top portion. And once we're at our stitch marker, we're just going to be doing an increase of 2, just like how we've been doing into the previous row. Not the previous row, because that one's going down and we didn't do anything in there, but the row right before that. So once we get here, we're going to go in. We can't take out our stitch marker for now. Don't put it away too far. We're going to go in with 1 slip stitch, and then into that same back loop, slip stitch number 2. And from there, we're going to, insert our stitch marker back into that loop. That's the second one that we just did. So the one that's highest, that's closest to the shoulder. But once we have that, we're going to slip stitch once into every loop that we have, going all the way back up. And then once we hit that last loop that we have, we are going to be doing an increase of 2, just like how we did over here. So here is 1, and then here is 2. Once when we have that, we're going to be slip stitching into that next available loop into the base. So insert, pull through. Once when we have that, we're going to slip stitch into that next available loop into the base, pull through, flip our work. And then from here, we're going to be going back down, doing the same thing that we've been doing. So insert into that first back loop with an increase of 2. So the ones that are closest to the base, we're going to be doing an increase of 2. But now that we're working our way down towards the bottom of our top, we aren't going to be doing that increase that we have into that corner just to round this out. We're just going to go all the way down with back loop slip stitches. And then this is going to be the remainder of the pattern until we hit wherever this chunk ends. So go ahead and keep going back and forth like that, and then I'll meet you guys back once when we don't have any more loops so that we can combat the rest of this together. So we are back, and we should have a little something that looks like this so far. And as you guys can see, I'm on my row that has ended this first little overhang chunk that we have, and we actually have another one to go into, but this part's going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to work all the way up until we get to this point, and we're actually going to start our sleeve now so that it can actually wrap around our side and around our arm at the same time. It's all going to have the same distance around. So once when we get here, just let you guys know, if some of you guys are following the pattern, I have a total of 21 rows right now. I haven't finished it off yet because we're right here. But all we're going to do is maintain an increase of 2 right here. And then we're going to work all the way up with back loop slip stitches until we get to this point. And then from here, we're going to measure out the length of the sleeve that we want. So just to show you guys what we're doing, this is our last loop that we had into this chunk that came straight up from this first overhang that we had. And then into this last loop, we did do an increase of 2. Let's do that together. We don't have any more loops left. We're going to go into that back loop with 1 slip stitch, and then into that same back loop with 2 slip stitches. And from here, we're going to work our way up all these side slip stitch rows doing single crochets. And then we're also going to do back loop slip stitches all the way up until we get to this corner right here. So now that we've done our single crochets and slip stitches all the way up until this corner, we're going to want to try this on and then measure out from this point down to where we want the sleeve to be. Mine is going to be a 3/4 length sleeve, so I'm going to make a chain that comes out to 19 inches or 48 centimeters or roughly 70 chains from this point. We now have the chain length that we need, and what we're going to do from here is block off that last chain, do a chain up of 1, insert our hook into that loop that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, and from here we're just going to go all the way down, leaving 1 slip stitch into every loop that we have going down into our chain, but leaving the last 2 loops that we have right before we get into the base because we are going to need to do a decrease. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you guys back. So we've just done our slip stitches going all the way down, and we have left the last 2 loops in our chain so that we can do a decrease into there together. So into that first chain, insert, pull through, and into that last chain, insert, pull through everything if I can. Let's do that again. Pull through everything. There we go. And then once when we get here, we're actually going to be doing another decrease of 2 into the first 2 back loops that we have into the body. So into this first available loop, yarn over, pull through, and then into that next available loop, yarn over, pull through everything on the hook. And then from here, this part is actually going to be super duper simple. We're just going to be going all the way down with back loop slip stitches, going all the way down to the bottom. No increases, no decreases. Even though these stitch markers are here, we're going to want this to all even out because you're going to want to seam it all in together at some point. So go ahead and just keep doing this all the way down. Once we make our way to the end, go ahead and do a chain up of 1, back loop slip stitch all the way back up until we have just about 2 loops away from this corner that we have, and then we're going to do another decrease. We've just made our way back all the way down until we just had 2 loops left right before we get into the sleeve, and we're going to be doing another decrease of 2. We're going to be doing 2 of them right next to each other. So into the last 2 loops that we have into the body, we're going to insert our hook into the second to last back loop, yarn over, pull through, and then into the third to last back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. That is our first decrease. And then we're going to be working into this sleeve chunk that we have right here, and we're going to be doing another decrease of 2. So insert, pull through, insert into the next back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. And then we're going to keep going back and forth like this for just a little bit. You guys are honestly going to have to eyeball it. I'll let you guys know my measurements in the next clip, but you guys just want to make sure that this can wrap around the majority of one side of your arm, and then the back half will actually wrap around the other half. So I'll meet you guys back once we have a little bit of this chunk done. So we are back, and we have finished one entire side of the front portion that we have. And just to let you guys know, from the first chain and first row that we made when it came to our sleeve all the way until where I ended, I had a total of 24 rows. And from there, I'm going to do the same exact thing that we did here, just on the other side. So I'm going to let you guys have at that. but we're going to start it off together because we don't need to do anything fancy. Since this chain is already here, all we're going to do is insert our hook into this bottom corner, making sure we're going into the back loop because this is just a bunch of back loop slip stitches. Insert our yarn onto our hook, and then we are ready to go. So go ahead and just work your way up with back loop slip stitches and then continue on with the pattern from there. And then I'll meet you guys back once we have this entire front panel all finished up. So while doing the sleeve, I know it's going to feel really super duper weird, but the sleeve is going to actually be a little bit smaller than what we would expect for it to be because of the way that we're constructing it. But we are going to end up going in with some extra rows on top to give us some extra length, but also keep in mind that this entire piece stretches quite a bit as well. So don't get too worried or discouraged while working up this piece. We're just going to go ahead and truck on through, and then we can continue on with the rest. But once when we have this pretty much all finished up, our entire front panel is good to go. And the next thing we're going to do is just go in with the back panel, which is much easier, a lot less counting and all that. But we do need to count one thing. And it's actually going to be the last row that we did right before we went in with our sleeve. So if we want to trace this row all the way up to the cable, and then once when it hits that corner, we're going to count these loops going all the way down. And I went ahead and already counted mine, and I counted out 77 loops. So once we have that number, we're going to flip it around, and then we're going to start off by making a chain into the back with that same chain count. And then something else that I'm going to say right before we get started is actually that once when we go in with this chain count, this is all going to be one big back panel of just back loop slip stitches. So this is going to be really easy. But once when we get to this side, that's when we're going to do this little overhang shoulder chunk that we have right here and then go into the sleeve. Once we have that, we're going to cut that off, and then we're going to do the same chunk between right here and then the sleeve along this side as well. So we're not going to neglect anything. It's just going to go about a little bit of a different way. But now we're about ready to get started with our back piece. So what I'm going to do is take a look at our collar, and we're going to count out 1, 2, we're going to count 1, 2, and then into that third, we're going to be inserting our hook into that third available loop. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into that third available loop. We're going to grab our yarn, which I have to grab mine, it's over there somewhere, but we're going to pull it through and then make a chain of whatever chain count you guys have, and I'll meet you guys back once when I find my yarn and make my chain count. Now that we have our chain, what we're going to do from here is block off that last chain, do a chain up of 1, insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the second one from our hook, and go in with slip stitches going all the way up our chain. Once we make our way over to the collar, we're going to slip stitch into the next available loop to close off this row. And then once we get there, we're going to slip stitch up the next available loop to start up the next row. Flip our work and then do more back loop slip stitches going all the way across the back piece of the collar, leaving the last 2 loops that we have on this side because that's going to be where our little extra chunk of our sleeve is going to come in. And also so it can match this side because we did skip these 2 loops over here as well. So go ahead and do that all the way down, and I will meet y'all back. So we've just finished up going in with this back detail that we have right here, and now we need to start working on our sleeve portion. But right before we start working on this little V triangle portion that we have, we're first going to have to go in with a couple of freestanding back loop slip stitch rows, where we're just going to go back and forth, where we don't attach it into the base, just so that it can match these chunks that we have right here. So now that we're at our last loop, what we're going to do is do a chain up of 1, flip our work, and then we're going to start going into these rows with back loop slip stitches going all the way down, and then we're going to keep going back and forth until you guys have the same amount of rows that you guys have right here. So I'm going to keep going until I have about 4 rows, and then I'll meet you guys back so that we can get started on the sleeve portion. We've just made our way back with our few rows that we made going back and forth, and we have the same amount of rows that we have right here as we have in the front. And now we're going to start going in with our sleeve. And this is going to be exactly the same way that we did the front, so I'm not going to do it with you guys. We're just going to make sure that we have the same chain count as we have in the front. And then we're going to keep going back and forth, remembering to decrease, just like how we have our decreases right here. And then we're going to keep going until we have the same amount of rows as we have in the front. And then once we have that, we're going to do the same thing that we just did here on the other side. So once when we get to the other side, all you're going to do is insert your hook into this top corner, and then go back and forth with however many rows of back loop slip stitches as you guys need so that it matches the front, just like how we did right here. And then we're going to go in with the same amount of chains as we have for our sleeve as in the front, and then same deal, keep going back and forth until you guys have the same amount of rows. Go ahead and cut and tie, and then I'll meet you guys back so that we can seam everything up and just add a few more details. Okay, cool. We are all back. We have just finished up going in with the, let's actually show you, the back chunk, and then also the sleeves that we're going to have into the back as well. And I've already seamed up one side. We're about to do a little detail along the other and then seam this up, and then we'll be all done with this piece. But yeah, so what we're going to do is basically, we're first going to see where we ended off our last rows. So for this next part, it's going to be fairly simple. All we're going to do is just take our shoulder chunk that we have. We should have a little gap in between because we did skip those loops. And then we're actually just going to be going back and forth with slip stitches, slip stitching into those loops. So you're going to have a little chunk that goes all the way up to the shoulder just as a little detail, but also to give us just a little bit more room for the sleeve. So the first thing we're going to do is just insert our hook in through the next available loop into any one of the sleeve sides. It does not matter which one. We are going to grab our yarn, make a slip knot, insert that onto our hook, and pull through. And then once we have here, we're actually just going to continue on with doing the same pattern. So we're just going to go all the way back down with back loop slip stitches. Once we get to the end, do a chain up of one, flip our work, and then make our way back. And we're just going to keep going back and forth like that until we don't have any more loops left to go into, and then we will need to seam it to the other side of our sleeve. But that's going to be fairly simple, so go ahead and just do this next part, and then I'll meet you guys back. Well, actually, we'll do the first one together. But since our hook is in here, we're actually just going to be inserting our hook into these side rows that we have, these side slip stitch rows, and we're just going to need to eyeball it with a slip stitch. And then however many rows we have right here, which in my case I have 4, I'm going to make sure that I go in with 4 slip stitches. So we just did 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then now we should be at the first loop that we have for our sleeve. And then from there, just go in with more back loop slip stitches. And then from here, go ahead and keep going back and forth. And then I'll meet you guys back so that we can seam this little extra chunk that we're doing onto the other side of our sleeve. So we have just made our way all the way down, going into those loops that we left for ourselves in that little chunk that we have. And now we're just going to seam everything up. But the first thing I'm going to say before we seam it up is just make sure that our collar is faced inside out. So inside out is this side right. The side that has this pretty ribbing is going to be on the outside. You're just going to want to make sure that that is sandwiched into each other. But once when it is facing the right side, we're just going to go in with a single crochet, making sure that we're going in through the front and the back panel at the same time. So that is our first one. So let's do the next one together. Into this next available loop that we have in our front panel, and then into the next available loop we have in our back panel, single crochet. And that is pretty much it. We're just going to keep doing this all the way down. Once we make it to the end and we don't have any more loops left, we're going to cut and tie and then seam up the underarm to the body, and then just do all of this all over again on the other side. So we are back and we have just finished up going in with our single crochet, seaming up the top portion of our sleeve. And the last thing we have to do is actually just seam up the bottom, which is going to be exactly the same, but we do have a little bit longer to go. So we're just going to be inserting our hook into this bottom corner, working our way all the way up and around. Once we make it all the way down to our sleeve, we're going to cut and tie. And we're just going to want to make sure that all of our seams are facing the same side. And then once we have this done, you guys can go ahead and do the other side. I already have mine all done. And then, yeah, we'll meet each other back. Yay, we are all back with our super duper cute top, and we are all done. The last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And this is our super duper cute v-neck top all finished up. I know this was a little bit of a doozy because it's completely customizable basically, but I'm sure that you guys did absolutely great. But if you guys are a little confused, I know I was, there is a pattern to follow along, link in the description if you'd like to grab that, or you can enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us a fun fact about you. It doesn't have to be crochet related or whatever you guys want, we just want to get to know y'all. Good luck to everyone who enters. Also, give this video a thumbs up and let us know what you liked about it, but if you didn't, give it a thumbs down, but let me know how we can improve. If you love it, be sure to hit that bell so you know when there's new uploads for you, and also be sure to share us on Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. Links down below. If you want to buy this piece or any other piece on the channel, links to our Poshmark, Depop, and Etsy are down there too, along with tools used. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.